All right, it's that time of year where you and I are just bound to get hurt again. But you know what? It's okay because today, 2 days before Miami kicks off against the Gators, I'm a believer. This is the year. This is the year that Miami wins it all. That, at the end of the football season, I'm feeling good. I'm going to be feeling on top of the world. We are going to win. You know why? Because we are kicking off against the Gators at 3:30 on Saturday. At 10 o'clock on Saturday, it's my daughter's birthday party, her second birthday party. And you know what happened the day she came back from the hospital 2 years ago? Well, 2 years and a couple days ago or less. Anyway, math's not important. The Canes had a game and we won. So we're winning Saturday because that's just how we do, baby. That's how we do.
Yeah. Okay. I fully, no question about it. I'm ready to get hurt again. I think the hype train is too far down the tracks for my comfort because I've seen this movie before. But happy college football season to all who celebrate. I'm currently watching on my phone Coach Prime losing to North Dakota State. Lots of other fun things. North Carolina State is tied with Western Carolina. It's madness. Enjoy it for those of you that celebrate, and for those of you that don't, leave the rest of us alone on Saturdays. Thank you.
100%.
Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex. With me, as always, is Ethan. And tonight, we are talking about work-life balance. I don't know about you, but this may be one where it's more do as I say and not as I do sometimes. It's been another fun week. But before we get into all of that, checking in, this is a reminder to like and subscribe. The best way to find our podcast is on YouTube. We're Working on the Dad Pod, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you need handy links, head to workingonthedadpod.com, and we've got it all there. Ethan, how's it going?
It is going. I, of course, am excited for the time of year that we are at, and with regard to college football being back and just having this fun time on Saturdays. That said, it was a tough week. My older daughter, it was her first week of junior kindergarten. And even though it's just a different side of the hall, the same side of the hall where she's got the gym, she's been coming home and it has been rough. It has been rough dealing with her at nights. And, I think tonight we all just kind of lost it at each other. And, I could really use some better work-life balance right now, just with regard to how that impacts my mental health.
Sure.
How are you?
About the same. We definitely had our fair share of meltdowns. It's been chaotic few weeks. I recapped them, and this one was no different. There's just more stuff that came up, and definitely ready for a normal week at some point that at least bears some semblance of a normal week. But let's start off with story time. I don't know if that was your story. I don't want to put you on the spot for that.
No. I mean, it sort of. Part of what made the week tough. I forget when we last when I mentioned this, if it was last episode or the episode before, but we've been every night checking to make sure the lice has been gone. We ended up having to do a second round of the aggressive NYX shampoo, but you can only do that once a week per what the box says. We have not found any live bugs, but every night we have found one egg. And it's like, where is this one egg coming from? Because, are we missing it? Are these just like stragglers from the beginning? Or, is like they're just a bug effing with us coming in, knowing because it could only live for 24 hours off the hair and like running over, jumping on her head, laying an egg and passing and going out, which would, kudos if that's the case. But that's actually not the point of my story.
That's painful.
Yeah, the point of my story is that while my wife has been taking on the burden of doing said checks every night, that has given me a lot of one-on-one time with my almost 2-year-old, whose birthday is this weekend. She will be turning 2, as she is an almost 2-year-old with a birthday this weekend. But it's just been a lot of us just playing together because it's I have to keep her entertained because she will just wants to be around her older sister leading into bedtime. So,
Of course.
And normally I will throw on a bathing suit and shower with both of them. It's the most efficient, but because of the hair situation, we're doing them separately. So the timing of our evenings has just been much longer this whole week. So that's kind of my story. But it's a happy story. One-on-one quality time with my baby. So
there you go. Well, for me, we also just sort of had one of those evenings where everything was just a fight, right? So we had this thing where my daughter, and this is almost a whole separate thing, but my daughter has been like fighting going to ballet, right? She like doesn't want to go to ballet practice. She says things like, I'm not excited for it. I hate it. I don't want to do it. But then when we say, we can just stop going, we can unenroll you, she cries bloody murder because she really wants to do it. And I don't know what kind of cognitive dissonance it takes, but the fact of the matter is this Saturday, she's going to be trying out for the Nutcracker, which is separate from her normal ballet classes and obviously a seasonal sort of Christmas-based show that they do in November. And she really, really wants to be in it. She's specifically in this ballet class because you have to be in Ballet 1 to try out for the Nutcracker. And so that's why we've done all this. And she kind of hates it. And so she had ballet practice today, and that's what brought it up. But then she's kind of on a razor's edge with her emotions. And she brings home the first of what I'm sure are many dreaded in my household fundraisers. The first,
yes.
I mentioned this last week, the PTO at my daughter's school had their first meeting last week, and I can't go to it as it's scheduled at 2:30 on Wednesdays. And as we talk about work-life balance, I can't balance that well. I'm not Simone Biles. So couldn't make it. Probably wouldn't have said everything I needed to say at my first one, but I absolutely hate these fundraisers that I'm sure you had them in school. And if you didn't, consider yourself lucky, but you're selling popcorn or wrapping paper or magazine subscriptions or some other useless crap at a gigantic to your family, your friends, your neighbors, your parents, coworkers, whoever you can get, so that you can get some dollar store prize if you sell enough. And the school can take 5-10% of whatever this company, whatever the number is, and give it back to them. And my wife and I are vehemently opposed. I said, if I ever ran for president of the PTA before I knew PTO locally, if I ever ran for the PTA, my entire platform would be telling parents, like making the carrot the idea. And I tweeted this out from our Twitter account earlier this week. But if I would make the carrot telling all the parents, hey, if you just write a check for like half of what you would spend on this crap, we will have to do a fundraiser. Otherwise, your kids are going to come home pestering you to buy mediocre flavored popcorn in giant 10-pound bags that cost $20 each.
Yep.
And of course, that is not what happened. And that's never what happens at schools. And my wife proceeded to explain to my daughter how, as I mentioned last week, our school is not full of, a ton of wealthy families. or anything like that, and that's totally okay. But they have an opportunity at the beginning of the year to sponsor the classes, and that basically gives the money directly to the classes. It's just a cash infusion. You pay digitally, and then the teacher can buy the supplies that they need. And you can see a list of the number of sponsors per class, right? And names and things like that. And some of the higher income elementary schools in different zip codes have 4 or 5 donors per class. A lot of my daughter's classes at school don't have any. And my parents and my wife's parents, they chipped in and they donated what I think is probably a pretty healthy amount. And so my wife explained to her that our process was going to be, because we were just going to give the money straight to the school instead of buying the useless crap, giving them a tiny percentage. And she laid this all out for my daughter and said, instead of spending hundreds of dollars so you can get this stuffed animal slap bracelet that you want, we will pay $10 on Amazon to buy you the koala stuffed slap bracelet that is probably better quality, because we actually know this brand. Donate the money directly to your class so that you can benefit and not buy any of this crap. And she had a full-on meltdown for 2 reasons. Because she didn't understand, she didn't understand why the teacher needed the money, and she was getting very upset about that. And I was like, I don't have time to explain to you why public schools are underfunded. That is a totally different conversation. And my wife was really taking the charge on this. I was making dinner and just kind of observing, but she absolutely melted down. And so we had to have that conversation. And this is my PSA to the PTAs of the USA is, if you have an opportunity to just solicit the money,
do it.
I feel like I am not alone, that parents don't want to be doing this. And at a certain point, I, as a kid, was like, I'm never getting that Razor scooter. I'm not selling $10,000 worth of this crap to get a Razor scooter. Yeah. And by the way, as someone who is now chasing my daughter on her bike every morning to school, I've looked at Razor scooters. They're $30 at Target. They're not that expensive in the year 2024. Buy your kid the Razor scooter, donate the money to school, and stop the nonsense, please.
Yeah, it reminds me also of back in our days in fraternity life, where we'd put on our philanthropy events and we would charge all money for participation from the sororities, and sometimes other fraternities would donate as well, as you remember. And then we'd spend that money on the activity we're doing and the prizes you get for participating, when really, instead of just doing the event at all, we could have just taken all the money we raised, just given it to them. But that's just
I'm
not
going
what we do.
to let you in on a secret, Ethan, that maybe you didn't know.
Part
of the perks as a late teens, early 20s male was getting to hang out with hundreds of sorority girls.
Oh, I'm aware.
We actually got a benefit from doing the fundraiser, which was different than me going door to door to neighbors I didn't talk to all around my neighborhood, trying to outrace the other kids in my neighborhood to the door to be like, hey, do you want to buy some magazines? You love magazines, don't you? But anyway,
I understand. I'm just saying the whole thing is, as the kids say, whack.
I don't think they say that anymore. I think
they say up. Yeah, that's us. So as I used to say, whack. Anyway, should we get into the work-life balance?
Yeah, let's do it. So let's start on basically defining what work-life balance is. And I think it's kind of self-explanatory in the title there, but it's, a lot of us have jobs. If you're a stay-at-home dad, I think this maybe isn't the particular conversation for you. And that's okay. I think there's maybe some things you can glean from it and how to come in recharged and rested for your time with your kids. But for those of us that work, work can often demand a lot from you. No matter what kind of job you have, it can demand a lot from you because your employers are trying to create the most value for their customers, their shareholders, whoever, and they're using you as the labor to do it. In exchange, you're getting a salary, right? And that is, that's a responsibility that you have. You have the responsibility to do the job that you signed up for and to continue doing that job so you get the salary to keep the roof over your head, food on the table, all the things you need to do. And so finding that balance is making sure that work doesn't bleed over unnecessarily into your personal life, and for the purposes of this conversation, into your relationship with your kids and your co-parent, in such a way that it can consume you. Because really what this conversation is a mental health conversation. It's not getting into the nitty-gritty of work. It's not getting into the nitty-gritty of parenting. It's getting into your mental health and how that affects yourself and those around you when you do it. So that is what we're talking about and what we mean when we're talking about work-life balance. And I think there are lots of struggles, right? So I think the struggles are, one, even if you work in an office, right? Ethan and I both primarily work from home, me exclusively, Ethan close to exclusively. And one of the things for me is, like my desk is in our living room. There's a curtain, it's behind a bookshelf. It's sort of just its own little nook, but it's really easy to get to my work computer and perform work functions at any time if I needed to. And so there's a struggle there. But, even if you're the type of person that goes to an office, your computer stays at the office, you can't bring the physical work home with you, there's still sort of that mental side where work is draining on you and it taxes you emotionally, right? You have stressful things, deadlines, meetings, expectations, all sorts of things weighing on you. And you have to then come home at the end of the day and summon the energy to be the parent that your kids need you to be, the parent that you probably want to be, the parent probably your co-parent expects you to be. And that's a tough needle to thread sometimes. I don't know. Are there other struggles that you sort of think about with this?
Yeah. A lot of it also sometimes is how do I phrase this? You try to one thing the pandemic taught me when I was exclusively working from home was, really in the beginning, I was just working extra to the point where I didn't used to need glasses, but I worked so much over the pandemic that I got blue lighted. So now I wear these glasses. And anytime I'm in front of a non-TV screen. And, I really had to train myself to say, hey, it is okay to just leave your work phone, which I had, leave the phone in a spot that I'm not. And I should probably also do that with my personal phone, but that's a topic for another day. But, it is really trying to find the separation, like the mental separation when you're in the same physical space. As Alex mentioned, I am not exclusively work from home anymore. I'm in the office 1 or 2 days a week. And, I would say that when I'm normally when I'm working from home, I'm more productive because I'm not thinking about that commute. And I'm thinking about what I need to get home to. Sometimes I'm like late to pick up my kids from preschool because that's just a 2-block walk, but I'm in the zone of whatever I'm doing. But every time I miss the metro, even if I see it driving away and I know the next one is just 5 minutes, just like knowing that the fun part of my day is further away, really does take a mental toll, even if it's just a couple of minutes, because it backs up everything. Yeah. So, I have found, at least when working from home, that there are opportunities to responsibly do your work-life balance at the same time. For example, not every meeting that I attend virtually, my camera needs to be on and I don't have a primary speaking role. It's more of listening. Can I do some exercising during that meeting? No, I can't like go for a jog, but I can do push-ups. I can do sit-ups. I can do something that I have needed to do at the other end. Is there a chore I need to do? Sometimes. Sometimes it is, you know, having silent sports in the background while I am, chiming in when I need to, but just being in a situation where I can turn my work-life balance, sometimes maximize the overlapping time, has been something that I have found to be helpful. It doesn't necessarily help you with the divide. That's kind of a blending.
I would say
trick.
that, and
Yeah.
I would say I was just going to chime in that for me, I did that for a long time, right? If I was in a work block where it's just work that I'm doing, that I might listen to, well, no, I wouldn't say listen to podcasts because I still do that, but I might pop on Netflix and have just like a background show, not something that I was super invested in, or a sports game, especially during baseball season. I have an MLB.TV subscription. There's a lot of 1:00 games. And so if there's a 1:00 game and I've got an afternoon work block, boom, gonna catch some baseball. And baseball is a slow enough sport that, you can kind of glance over and see what's happening and you don't have to have your eyes glued. But what I ended up finding out for me was that what then happened is if I ever chose to sit down and watch something at my computer at night, I'd find myself trying to work. And I find myself with that blurred line, like blurring both ways, where the personal life would come into the work a little bit to help me sort of manage that. But then the work would then bleed back into the personal life. And so I actually had to probably a few months ago really tighten up my boundaries and my work-life balance on that, to just say work time is work time and family time is, family time. And
can I interject with a question? That was actually shocking to hear because, when it is in fact, family, relaxation time, whether it's my wife and I watching The Bachelorette, I am not thinking about work. So I'm not even I'm not around my work stuff. So are you doing the non-work time at your work desk? Is that what's going on? Is that what's making you work?
Correct.
Or
So this
it's
is
more
usually a
okay.
situation where my wife and I don't spend as much time like watching TV shows together as you guys do by some magnitude. Rarely, we might catch a movie that we both want to watch, but she's very into books. I'm very into sports, and we just don't have a need to sit there and go, well, we could sit silently watching the same thing, or we could sit silently doing different things. And so we usually choose that. And so this is after the kids have gone to bed, after the chores are done, and it's sort of just me time. And maybe there's a later baseball game or there's a football game or something, and I'm watching that and I'm like, well, while I'm doing this, I could be knocking out this task that I have to do tomorrow. Right. And so there's a deeper conversation here about me, for lack of a better term. But there are some other things, as I mentioned several times on the pod. Specifically, I know in our working on our mental health episode, I've been diagnosed with ADHD. And so one of the things that comes to me when you say you're never thinking about it is like, I tend to have this sort of underlying anxiety that when things are busy at work, I tend to like fret about them and sometimes wake up early, not dreaming about them, but then like I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I got to do that thing today. And so I've had to develop some strategies and some just barriers for myself to stop doing that. Right. And there are ways to do it. Right. I work in an organization where like a lot of things, like I have to have this computer, my personal computer, to be watching something, to be entertaining myself. So I have 2 monitors going on my personal computer. Okay, well, let's just not allow that setup. If I don't have that setup, then I can't do work and personal stuff at the same time, because I can't do my work stuff on my personal computer and I can't do my personal stuff on my work computer. And so I just set the boundaries where I go, like, I just switch all the HDMI cords so that all my monitors are plugged into my MacBook where I can't do the work, versus plugged into my Windows PC where I can do the work and can entertain myself, and sort of make that switch. But I would do a thing where it's like, okay, well, I'll just have that laptop up here to do some baseball. And then I've got my 2 screens to do my plenty of work kind of thing. And so I've had to develop strategies of like just unplugging and then to resolve the anxiety. And I think this is a tip that if you're somebody struggling with work-life balance, maybe you don't have ADHD, maybe you don't have anxiety, but maybe you do find yourself like thinking about work and the things you have to do and letting that get to you. What I have started doing, and I didn't bring it with me, I'll just use my wife's as an example, is I just keep a notebook, right? I just keep a notebook, and it's a Rocket Book, which is like an erasable pen notebook. And you can take a wet microfiber cloth and erase the thing. And so I really like that. And I just have what's called my parking lot. And I use it during the day and I use it in the evening, where just like something comes up, I write it down. That way I don't have to distract myself with that while I'm working on something that's actually more important, because I can very much go, ooh, new problem to solve. Let me solve that. And then completely forget about what I was doing. So I have that parking lot, and I use it in the evening to just dump out all my thoughts of all the things I need to do the next day. I don't necessarily organize it. Maybe I'll pick my top 3 or something, but I write it all down. And that way I can sort of close that notebook and say, okay, that's what I've got to tackle. Now it's out of my head. It's written down. I'm not going to forget it, because I have digital project management softwares. I have all sorts of those things, and they tend to last like a week or 2 per system. This is the thing that sticks for me. And it's something where if you are trying to unplug, as I sometimes do, and try to, read, relax, do something, go do some mobility, foam roll, and unplug, it is a non-digital way. Like I don't turn on the computer to write out my to-do list and then get sucked into doing something else and get scope creep. And so I have, and I was going to talk about this whole parking lot thing later, but since
it's good.
Conversation sort of organically got there, I think that is a great way for me. I also try to do this either before I have to go pick up my kids, or I know they're coming home, depending on what day it is and who's bringing and taking and all that stuff. And I try to use that just sort of manual, writing it down. And then there's like a dopamine release that you can get from actually just like crossing the stuff off pen on paper that you don't always get from the click. And so that has been one of the things for me, because what I would find is I'd have a stressful day and then I'd have anxiety because maybe I didn't get everything to do I wanted. I didn't do everything I wanted to do because other things came up that took priority, and those other to-dos just didn't go away. And like bringing that anxiety and stress, I could start to feel it in how it interacts with my wife and kids, of just like, it's a little short temper, a little bit shorter of a fuse, a little bit more on edge, a little bit just like rushing people and jumping at things that didn't need to be solved because I was just in this like agitated, like got to get stuff done because there's other stuff to do kind of anxiety. And yeah, that's just sort of one way that I think, again, whether you've got the same things going on as me or not, that can be an awesome way to sort of mark down what you need to do, not forget it, and release that anxiety.
So now that you've explained what you meant, I actually do the same thing. It's just not work. So, when I am watching something passively, I am thinking about all of the non-work stuff that is required work of me to do, whether that is sending off important emails to, my doctor, or, if I've got to think about party plan, like, just tasks, chores.
Paying bills, shopping for
Yeah.
things that need for
Yeah.
the
Right.
house, remembering
Yes.
like, oh, hey,
That's what I was trying to
exterminator's
say.
been doing a crappy job. I need to call them and fire them and find a new
Yes.
exterminator. Oh, our AC
Yeah.
broke. I need to find an AC, whatever those kind of things. I know exactly
Yeah.
what you mean. And I
Yeah.
will say this: turn the page and have a personal parking lot. Like because
Right. Yeah.
these are tactics. I didn't come up with this, right?
Sure.
This is something that I've worked on with my therapist, and and she advised that to separate my parking lot from personal and professional. That way I could keep that delineation. And then when I turn the page at night, I don't think that that's that crazy of a thing to do, is to fire off the emails and take care of your personal stuff during your personal time. Like that is the life, like it's work, but it's the life portion of this Venn diagram that we ideally want to be two touching circles with no middle section.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel you. It's just that sometimes it just feels like the moment of peace and relaxation that I am searching for is not there. And I will say that, and just to get into, to jump ahead and say that this was not my best working on the dad bod week, it is because, the free time and the, dopamine release I've been getting, and way too late at night, which is probably a really poor contributor, is I've been playing a lot of NCAA 25.
Yeah.
I've been getting my money's worth out of this game. And, I'm not going to talk about how I just won my second national championship in 10 years. Like, I'm not the best. Okay. I'm pretty good, but I'm not the best. We're not going to talk about how good I am with two separate schools winning 2 national titles. We're not going to talk about it. What we are going to talk about is say that I have definitely been letting that part of my personal life creep into, my responsibility life, because, it is definitely, taking too much out of me. So,
yeah. And I get that. And so I think, back to a larger conversation sort of on setting those boundaries, whether you're doing the parking lot strategies or whatever, but one of the biggest things that I just sort of remember is I was like, emotionally, yes, I could remember when my parents like brought work home with them, and you could tell that they'd had a tough day, or when I was older, they might actually vent to me about what was going on because I could understand a little bit about what they were talking about.
Right.
But I think one of the biggest differences between when we graduated high school versus now is like, I can do a mediocre job at my job from my phone, which is always in my pocket.
Right.
And so creating some technological barriers has also been big for me in the work-life balance. So one is, I have a charger on my desk, and I can just leave my phone sitting on the charger or just sitting on my desk, whatever I need, when it's dinner time, when it's family time, when my kids are there, and like anybody else that calls me, whatever. I still have my Apple Watch, but I can do, do not disturb, right? If it's really important. And I think that's been a big thing for me. And then on top of that, what I've also set up is like, my company uses Microsoft products. And so Outlook, Teams, whatever. And those programs, and I would sure if you're a Google and Slack organization, you probably have these settings too, but being able to set times within the apps of when you don't get notifications, so that you're not getting an email from a coworker who's burning the midnight oil. Or in my case, I have coworkers that work in Pacific time, and they will quite often at 7:30 at night for me, 4:30 in the afternoon for them, send a comment in our project management system or an email or a Teams chat. And I'm like, I need to have these notifications off, because if they send me something that's like a question, my brain, and I had a conversation with this about my boss today, of like, I am a problem solver. You probably know this from experience that like you come to me and say like, hey, I can't figure out how to do so-and-so. And then like, you've got me for the next hour. You've got my attention and I am ready to do it. And so when someone does that, like my kid could be crying and I could be like, oh crap, sorry. And like put the, you know, kind of catch myself. And so having to build those technological barriers for me has been super important because again, it creates the anxiety, the desire to jump up and solve it, the desire to like get it done because I'm afraid of like, oh, what is this going to do? And let's say a notification still comes through because I think I have it set to go off at like 6 p.m. And so let's say it comes through at 5:30. I look at it, I process it, and then I hit the snooze function on the email, right? I hit the snooze function in our task management system. I hit the unread function in Microsoft Teams or whatever, and I can just deal with it in the morning. And like, that has actually been a big hurdle to jump for me. But the other problem, and this is an interesting thought that I'd love to get your take on, is sort of the inverse, right? We've talked about how, you know, we let work creep into life and how we sort of let life, you know, come into work on our own terms, right? Like watching silent sports in the background while you're on a meeting you don't actually need to participate in, or just doing some work. But excuse me. But then there's also the like actual life creeping into your work. Like yesterday at 2:00, started getting a message from my son's school, and you can kind of guess where this is going if you've been listening since episode 1 or only listened to episode 1. Kids get sick. And so my son got sick, and my son, I had to go pick him up because my wife was like, listen, I can be with him in an hour, but I have this deadline sensitive thing that I have to get knocked out. And if he's here, again, she's out here in this separate building from our house, so she can isolate herself pretty well. She's like, I just need to not see him. Like, I want to care for my baby and it's killing me, but I got to get this done. Right. And so I had to go pick him up, and he's sobbing and he's a mess. He's complaining about his teeth hurting. It would turn out to be an ear infection. Excuse me. And he actually recovered and is going to be able to go back to school tomorrow, and did really well. He briefly got a fever last night, but he knocked it pretty quick. So he's been doing well, but just that idea of 2:00 in the afternoon, I got to bring him home. That disrupts my work day. And then I'm like, okay, I can hand them off to my wife at 3, and I've only really lost like an hour here. Well, get ready to take him to urgent care. And guess what? He is adamant that mommy and daddy go. And my wife goes, okay, here's what we'll do. Let's appease him. Get in the car, bring your laptop, bring your power cord. In the shopping center with the urgent care, there's a coffee shop 2 doors down. I'm like, great, coffee shop. Let's go. And we go to this urgent care, and usually between wait times and the actual time to run tests and diagnoses and all this stuff, we're talking an hour plus. So I'm like, I'll get an hour work in here, go back home. Excuse me. I need to.
Did you catch? Did you catch something while you were there?
It's like I very well might have.
Yeah. Well, while you're doing that,
no, I was just gonna to finish that thought. I get to the coffee shop. They close at 3:30 in the summer, and it was like 3:35 at this point. And so I go to the diner next door. I had been to this diner. It's a 24-hour diner. I'd been there when our internet went out one time, and I like absolutely had to get some work done. And I knew that they had good internet, and so I go. And now it's like 4:00. And I order myself a Reuben sandwich and some fries because I'm like, I'll probably just stick this in a to-go box and do dinner. We're probably going to do like grilled cheese and tomato soup tonight anyway with the kids because this is a chaotic as heck day. And as soon as the guy brings my order, my wife texts me, okay, this is what it is. They've sent in the prescription. We're checking out now. And I'm like, hey, man, can I get a to-go box for this complete plate of food that you just sat down? Like, you haven't even walked away. Can I get the check in the box?
And there you got to use my life hack about asking for the to-go box when the food comes to manage your portion control. So there you go.
I ended up eating the whole thing within the next hour and a
Sure.
half. It didn't really manage
There
a
you go.
single
There you-
a single ounce of food, but it was delicious. But I sat at my desk doing it after we got back home, eating and getting a little work done until my daughter arrived with my mom. But just those kind of days where you're just like, and I'm lucky enough to be in an organization where there are other parents. There are parents of young kids. My boss and my boss's boss both have kids who are elementary school age or younger. And so I'm like, I know they get it, right? They've canceled meetings because I know they get it, right?
Mhm.
Or rescheduled meetings. And I'm like, but I still that thing of like the to-do list didn't go away. The other
Sure.
people counting on me didn't go away to do my
Mhm.
job. And unfortunately, I'm in a position at my work where I am basically a one-man wrecking crew on my team, where some other teams have 4 or 5, 6 members, and it's just me holding down the
Mhm.
fort on what I do. So it's sort of like if I don't do it, everything comes to a screeching halt. Or if I
So
don't delegate it effectively. So yeah.
yeah, no, so I feel that. What I will say to answer your question is I make it very known when I'm interviewing for a job how important my kids are and how I am the work from home emergency parent. I'm not going to say the primary parent anymore because I've been told that's not nice. But what I will say is that, you know, because I have the ability to work from home and my wife does not, all of these emergencies or spur of the moment situations fall on me. Every once in a while, she has to do it where, if I happen to be in the office, if it's a Wednesday when I'm in the office and she's at work and the emergency is happening at the exact moment that I need to do something, sometimes she bites the bullet and is the one that takes the leave and comes home. But for the most part, is if we've got a sick kid or there's an appointment or any possible reason why I can't go into the office, I'm the one that does it. And I made that very very clear. I say that my career is dad and my job and what pays the bills is work. And, sometimes people don't understand that, especially for me as somebody who works in the government. There's probably a person or two who heard me say that and think, I can't believe my tax dollars are going to you, you know, uh, staying at home and taking care of your kids. That's not what's happening. I use leave. You're not paying for that time. I'm also a taxpayer, so consider that part my money. But what I will say is if I'm not able to handle my crap that is, outside of work, my quality of work isn't going to be good anyway. So you might as well
Yeah.
let me get the peace of mind and get this
Yeah.
stuff done, and I will make up that time. And, it's really the other way around where, not to get too into the weeds here, but, we started recording late because of just side hustle work that I do. And, that's usually what actually creeps in mostly to my work life balance. And when I say I don't feel like I really have the best right now, because all those other things I'm thinking about and what I'm trying to do to get ahead of the moment is actually taking away my time of that I just need to be me. And
Yeah.
I hate that I had to push our recording session back, even though it was just 15 minutes. It's like this is one of the few hours a week that is like truly mine. And
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
I
I think that's a really good segue though
desecrated it.
into finding that you time, right? And I think as a
Mhm.
parent, when we say finding you time, that doesn't mean that it's going to be every single day and it's going to be consistent. You can build it into a morning routine, like you might see a social media influencer doing a sauna, cold plunge workout, make their like fancy espresso drink, do a stretching routine, go for a walk, journal, and then somehow get to work. And you're like, what is your life? Right? Congratulations, I guess. Seems lonely, but that's my own judgment. But yeah, I think when you're a parent, especially of young kids, your you time has to come in blocks. And it may not be mapped out on the calendar as a recurring event, but it may be just those times that you can sort of find it. And my best advice is having open and healthy communication with your partner, because there are some days that you're not going to have it, and there's some days that they're not going to have it. And you got to be able to pick each other up. You also have to decide what the bare minimum is. Tonight was a tough night in our household. And it was like, okay, the pets need to be fed. The litter box needs to be cleaned. The bare minimum needs to be done. But we're not going to vacuum the floors like we do every night. And we're not going to, fold the mass of laundry that's on the couch right now. That's tomorrow's problem, because we just need a little time. And then it also is the same with, talking to my wife. And we've talked about this before, about the alternating Saturdays thing where we do, one Saturday a month. We've gotten out of that practice. Life's gotten busy. And so with that, it's sometimes been like, hey, like I actually offered to my wife, because I could tell that she sort of needed it. Yesterday, I went to her on Tuesday night and I said, hey, by the way, my mom's picking up both kids. I'm thinking of doing like grilled cheese and tomato soup anyway for dinner. Should be an easy night. If you just want to like get out of here and go somewhere, I'll take care of bedtime. I'll do all of it. Like, just take your time. And then our son got sick, and that got thrown out the window. So
sure, but you offered, so you get the credit.
Yeah, something like that. But just finding those buckets of time, leaning on support systems. If you have grandparents, family members, or just your co-partner, ideally you and your co-partner could both get away, right? My wife and I are taking a trip next month to actually get away. And I'm looking forward to that so much. And I told my wife, I was like, we're going to Scotland. And that is amazing. And I'm very excited for it. It could be an hour up the road at this point. I just need it to be away. I need it to be away. And like, that's about all. That's my only requirement. And yeah, just sometimes try to find those. If it's an hour, the other tip I would say is just make it purposeful. Like if you're sitting there doom scrolling or doing something that like isn't actually recharging you, you have to be honest with yourself on that one. That's probably not the best use of your time. And again, I'm not telling you that you have to go meditate like a Buddhist monk, or that you have to journal all your thoughts, or that you have to do any one particular thing, but making sure that you come out of there with a much better attitude is the goal. A couple of weeks ago, took an opportunity. My work does summer Fridays. You get off at 2. I went to the library. I read comic books, and then I went to the local brewery that some of my friends own. And I came back recharged. And I was able to take the kids on Saturday morning, full of energy, full of zest, and give my wife the space that she needed that day in return. And we both came out the other side stronger. And maybe you don't have the opportunity to take off at 2:00 on a Friday. I'm losing that opportunity as of tomorrow. But find what time you do have, whatever it is, and make the most of it, I would say.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this coming Monday where, it's Labor Day. So I was going to be off from work. My wife has to work, but she gets double pay. So that's extra change. And then I thought, and the kids are going to be at school there. But then they sent out the snack calendar yesterday for the month of September. And it specifically said Monday, no school. And I forgot that just because I'm off, they're not. So all of my plans, which were nothing
Yeah.
is taken off the board. But I am excited for the long weekend. I'm doing the opposite of a summer Friday tomorrow. I will have my first substitute teaching gig in the afternoon of the school year. So, got to do 5 of those to stay in the system. Should the government ever shut down again? But should be a fun day of hanging out with elementary schoolers.
Yeah. From experience, they can complain a lot, but
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
I would also throw this out there. If you have the opportunity to take vacation, paid time off from your work, and let's say you get, 10, 14 days a year, whatever it is, maybe you have unlimited, take a day for yourself. Like Ethan's comment about Labor Day brought this idea up, but like, don't take Labor Day or don't take the day after Labor Day or whatever. Just take a Wednesday, take a random Friday, take a random Monday that isn't a holiday, and plan that out for yourself when the kids do have it, when maybe your spouse is working, or maybe you and your spouse, your co-parent, maybe they take it off too, and you guys just go do something. But I think too many people save vacation time for when we are traveling to go on vacation. And as we've sort of alluded to and talked about on this podcast, that is not always a very recharging experience for a parent. So, maybe save 1 or 2 days a year for just some you time where you can and utilize that.
100%. 100%.
Should we work on the dad bod?
Yeah, I'll go first since I already alluded to it. I went up to 189 when I weighed in before we recorded. I was 186 last week. So, not the best week. No, yeah, sure, totally. No, I don't think I took I didn't do a good job of taking care of myself this week. I mentioned long late nights playing video games, not the best amount of sleep. Maybe 1 or 2 days that I worked from home instead of, doing my normal lunchtime jog. I might have played a lunchtime game or two. So it wasn't the best use of my self-care, at least in the physical sense, but I have been having a lot of fun. So, moral victory, said no one ever. How about you? How are things going for you?
They're going pretty well. So, I mean, despite all the chaos of the week, I have not had I didn't have, good week, bad week, whatever. I've been able to go to the gym every single day, which was new. I wasn't able to do that last week. My daughter and I both got sick. I think that's what my son ended up catching, something like that. We got tested for everything. It's just some random virus, but we, one thing that has really sort of stuck with me this week, and really over the last couple of weeks, is this concept that I hear vocalized by a ton of creators that I see on social media. One of which, because I'm trying to get better about remembering names and calling them out, is Liam Layton. His account is sometimes called The Plant Slant, but there's a ton of people out there. And the idea is called Eat What You Want, Add What You Need. And this is sort of a twist on the intuitive eating that we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast, but it's the idea of like, we let my daughter pick some of the menu this week of what she wanted for dinner. And one night she said, I want chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. And so we said, okay. And we added broccoli to the mac and cheese. We found a New York Times recipe for broccoli mac and cheese. It was very delicious. And then we had a bunch of leftover mac and cheese, but I didn't want to eat chicken nuggets every day. Like, we don't have that many and whatever. But we'd also gotten a rotisserie chicken. And so what I would do is I would take pieces of rotisserie chicken. I'm like, I want some mac and cheese. It's good comfort food. It tastes delicious. But let me add some chicken breast to this. Let me just pull off some ready-made chicken breast that I don't have to cook, add this to it, heat it all up, and that's my lunch. And I've also done this sometimes with pancakes. My wife is stuck with it. It's not my favorite, but this is an idea for anybody that does. Instead of covering your pancakes in syrup, take a little bit of syrup and mix it in some Greek yogurt, and then have a sweet maple flavored Greek yogurt on top of your pancakes. And you've added some protein to your pancakes, right? And so it's this idea of take the thing you're going to eat, maybe scale down the portion of that so you're satisfying the craving, and then add something on top of it, protein, fiber, the good stuff that you know you're probably missing if you just eat what you want, but adding what you need. So that's been really helpful for me on a couple of fronts when like I have taken that same rotisserie chicken, and a lot of times if I need a quick snack, I love making myself a quesadilla. That's fine. I'm not here, just tortilla, cheese, some Franks. I'm not here to besmirch anybody who likes that. I like it myself. But again, adding some chicken so that I have one chicken quesadilla instead of 2 cheese quesadillas. And then I've satisfied the craving and got some more things that I need in my diet.
So that actually, thank you for reminding me. I did this the other day and I thought, wow, this would be great podcast content. But normally every week when we go to the farmer's market, one of our regular purchases is fresh pasta. And I'm quite good at making sauces from scratch. And my wife said, I want you to make one of your sauces. So we were there. Some onion, some garlic, some mushroom, some tomatoes. And then I had this idea because my daughter specifically said she didn't want a meatball, a turkey meatball, which we always give her with pasta. So I said to my wife, I said, what if I blended up some navy beans, which if you haven't had navy beans before, if you're a listener, I know Alex has, they are mostly flavorless, just balls of protein. And I blended it up in the food processor, and then I used that in the tomato sauce rather than using tomato paste, and I just used regular diced tomatoes. And when I mixed up the sauce, it was a thicker, protein-heavy tomato sauce from scratch, and it tasted really good. Threw in some additional seasoning, but the point is, I found a way not just for my kids but for me to get some additional good protein in a homemade meal. So I did want to share that.
Nice.
The navy bean hack. Yeah.
There you go.
So, yeah. Support our troops. Eat navy beans.
Alrighty. Well, run the triple option on your meatballs. There you go. All right, guys.
No.
Well, he's Ethan. I'm Alex. I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode. We will be back next week. And in the meantime, please remember, like, subscribe, share with a friend, share with an enemy, share with whoever you want, but share the podcast. We appreciate it, and we'll see you soon. All right, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.